The morning sun of Ultros 7 cast gentle purple light through the crystal windows of the Galactic Institute's main lecture hall. Students from across known space settled into their floating seats, their various forms creating a rainbow of peaceful evolution. The avian scholars preened their shimmering feathers while discussing quantum mechanics in melodic chirps. Nearby, the Lumina beings pulsed soft blue patterns to each other, sharing thoughts through bioluminescent conversation. In the back corner, 3. Verdani swayed gently, their leaf-covered bodies absorbing the artificial sunlight streaming from the ceiling panels. Professor Thane adjusted his silver-tipped wings and cleared his throat with a soft trill. His ancient eyes, large and kind like all avian species, surveyed the classroom with warmth. This advanced xenobiology course attracted the brightest minds from peaceful worlds, beings who had evolved beyond the primitive need for violence or aggression. Today we welcome a new student, Professor Thane announced, his voice carrying the musical quality of his people. They come from a recently contacted world in what they call the Sol system. Their species has requested educational exchange, and we are honored to facilitate this learning opportunity. The door at the back of the hall hissed open. Conversation stopped. Bioluminescent patterns froze mid-pulse. Even the normally stoic, silicon-based mechanoids turned their optical sensors toward the entrance. Alex walked in, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Standing nearly 2 full meters tall, the human moved with a fluid grace that screamed apex predator to every evolutionary instinct in the room. Dense muscle moved beneath clothing that somehow made the being look both civilized and dangerous. But it was the face that caused several lumina to dim their lights in pure terror. 2 eyes, forward-facing, predator eyes. They swept the room with casual efficiency, taking in exits, threats, and the location of every other being present. When Alex smiled, apparently trying to appear friendly, rows of teeth became visible, flat ones for grinding, sharp ones for tearing, the smile of something that had evolved to eat other living things. "Hi, everyone," Alex said, voice carrying easily, across the silent room. "I'm Alex, and I'm really excited to be here. I hope we can all be friends." A Verdani student's leaves rustled with such violence that 3 fell to the floor. One of the mechanoids made a sound like a failing processor. The bravest Lumina managed a weak orange glow that roughly translated to, "Please don't eat us." Alex seemed genuinely confused by the reaction. "Is everything okay? Did I say something wrong?" Professor Thane recovered first, though his feathers remained slightly ruffled. "Not at all, dear student. Please take any available seat. We were just adjusting to your presence." As Alex moved through the classroom, students scattered like leaves before a storm. The human seemed oblivious to the panic, choosing a seat in the middle of the room with a cheerful, "Thanks, Professor." The seat groaned under Alex's weight. These furniture pieces were designed for the light, graceful bodies of civilized species, not for beings built like living weapons. "Now then," Professor Thane continued, his voice only slightly strained, "today we begin our study of evolutionary adaptation across different world types. Each species here represents a unique solution to the challenges of survival and advancement." Alex raised their hand. Every being in the room flinched. "Yes, Alex? I was wondering about the criteria for advancement. On Earth, that's my world. We usually measure it by technological and social development, but I noticed most species here seem to have evolved away from physical capabilities that my people retained. Is that considered more advanced?" The question was innocent enough, but it highlighted something that made everyone uncomfortable. Every species in this room had evolved beyond the need for physical prowess. The avians had developed their massive brains and delicate bones. The Lumina had become beings of living light. The Verdani had chosen the peaceful path of plant-like existence. Even the mechanoids had abandoned organic forms entirely for pure logic and reason. But this human had somehow achieved spaceflight and advanced technology while remaining what could only be described as a perfectly designed killing machine. Professor Thane chose his words carefully. Different species find different evolutionary paths, Alex. Most civilized worlds discovered that reducing aggressive capabilities led to greater focus on mental and social development. That makes sense, Alex nodded, apparently missing the subtle implication that humans were somehow less civilized. Humans took a different approach, I guess. We kept our physical abilities but learned to control them. My species has this saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. It means you can be peaceful while still being capable of protecting yourself and others. A mechanoid named Logic spoke up, their voice a series of precise tones. Query: what level of physical capability does your species retain? Alex brightened, clearly happy to share. Oh, we're pretty sturdy. An average human can lift about twice their body weight, run for hours without stopping, and survive in environments that would kill most other species I've read about. We heal fast, adapt quickly, and we have this emergency response system that makes us stronger and faster when we're threatened. The classroom was so quiet that the gentle hum of the air recycling system became clearly audible. We also have really good pattern recognition, Alex continued, still smiling that terrifying smile. Humans are excellent at tracking, hunting down problems, and finding solutions. Our ancestors were persistence hunters. We would literally chase our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Pretty cool evolutionary adaptation, right? A Lumina student pulsed a sickly yellow color and made a sound like a strangled chime before fainting onto the floor. Professor Thane quickly activated the medical alert system while Alex jumped up, clearly concerned. Oh no, are they okay? Should I help? I know some first aid. Please remain seated, Professor Thane said quickly, his voice higher than usual. The medical staff will handle this. As the medical team, a group of gentle healers from various species, carefully tended to the unconscious Lumina, Alex looked around the room with genuine worry. I really hope I didn't cause that. I was just trying to make conversation and share information about human biology. The problem was, Alex had shared that information, and every being in that room now understood exactly what kind of creature had just casually walked into their peaceful academic environment. They were sitting in a classroom with something their species had nightmares about, a perfect predator that had somehow learned to talk, think, and apparently attend university. As the class ended early due to the medical emergency, students filed out in unusual silence. Alex packed up their materials slowly, clearly sensing something was wrong but not understanding what. Professor Thane approached carefully, keeping his distance. Alex, might I suggest you visit our Cultural Orientation Center? They can help. You understand how to interact more comfortably with other species. Alex looked up with those forward-facing eyes, and Professor Thane had to fight every instinct telling him to fly away immediately. Of course, Professor. I want to fit in here. Humans are social creatures. We really don't like being isolated from the group. As Alex left the classroom, Professor Thane sank into his chair, feathers still trembling slightly. He had spent his entire academic career studying the evolution of intelligence and civilization across the galaxy. Every species followed the same basic pattern: become peaceful, reduce physical capabilities, focus on mental development. But these humans had somehow become spacefaring, technologically advanced, and socially sophisticated while remaining apex predators. It challenged everything he thought he knew about the development of civilized species. The implications were staggering, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a tiny voice whispered a terrifying question. If humans had achieved all of this while keeping their predatory nature, what did that make them capable of? 3 days had passed since Alex's first appearance in Professor Thane's classroom, and word had spread across the campus like wildfire. The cafeteria buzzed with whispered conversations about the human predator who walked among them. Some, Students had even started taking different routes to avoid possible encounters. The Advanced Evolutionary Biology Laboratory was smaller than the main lecture hall, with only 20 students selected for this prestigious course. Today's lesson focused on predator-prey relationships throughout galactic history. Professor Thane had specifically chosen this topic, hoping to create a learning opportunity from their unusual situation. Alex arrived precisely on time, carrying a steaming cup of what appeared to be dark liquid. The aroma was strong and bitter, unlike anything the other species consumed. Several Verdani students actually recoiled from the scent. "Good morning, everyone," Alex said cheerfully, settling into a reinforced chair that had been specially requisitioned. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" The response was a collection of nervous chirps, flickering lights, and rustling leaves that roughly translated to, "Please don't notice us." Professor Thane activated the holographic display, showing a three-dimensional model of a forest ecosystem from the peaceful world of Serenity Prime. Today we examine how prey species developed various survival strategies when faced with predatory threats. As you can see, most successful species eventually evolved beyond the need for such relationships entirely. The hologram showed graceful, deer-like creatures with oversized eyes and delicate limbs. They moved in slow, careful patterns, feeding on luminous fruits that grew in easy reach. A luminous student named Glow pulsed a soft blue inquiry pattern. "Professor, how did species transition from predator-prey relationships to peaceful coexistence?" "Excellent question," Professor Thane replied, his wings spreading slightly in the avian gesture for teaching mode. "Most worlds discovered that predatory behavior was an evolutionary dead end. Species that retained aggressive traits eventually destroyed themselves or stagnated, while those that embraced peaceful development achieved spaceflight and advanced civilization." Alex raised their hand. The movement was quick and efficient, causing half the class to instinctively shrink back. "Yes, Alex, I'm curious about the persistence hunting you mentioned in the historical records. The display shows prey species becoming slower and more docile over time, but what happened to the pursuit predators? Did they all go extinct?" Professor Thane's feathers ruffled slightly. This was exactly the kind of question he had hoped to avoid. "Well, pursuit predation is indeed rare in civilized space. Most species that employed such tactics failed to develop beyond primitive stages." Alex leaned forward, clearly interested. "That's fascinating because humans are persistence hunters. We're actually really good at it. Our bodies are designed for long-distance pursuit over varied terrain." The classroom fell silent except for the soft humming of environmental systems. "Could you elaborate?" asked Logic, the mechanoid student. Their optical sensors focused on Alex with mechanical precision. Alex brightened, apparently delighted to share. "Sure. Human persistence hunting is based on our superior endurance capabilities. We have this unique cooling system called sweating that allows us to regulate body temperature during extended physical activity. Most mammals overheat during long pursuits, but humans can literally run prey to death." A Verdani student made a sound like leaves being shredded. "The process is actually quite elegant," Alex continued, seemingly oblivious to the growing horror around them. "You identify your target, then you follow it. Not fast, but steady. When it runs, you maintain pursuit. When it rests, you keep coming. Eventually, the prey animal becomes exhausted and overheated, while the human remains functional." How long can humans maintain this pursuit?" Professor Thane asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, it depends on the terrain and the prey, but humans have been recorded running continuously for over 24 hours. Some of our marathon runners can cover over 100 kilometers in a single day. Our ancestors would sometimes chase large animals for days across entire continents." A luminous student flickered rapidly through several colors before settling on a sickly green that indicated extreme distress. Alex took a sip of their bitter drink and continued. "The really interesting part is the psychological component. Humans don't just rely on physical endurance. We're excellent at tracking and pattern prediction. We can follow trails that are hours or even days old, predict where prey will go, and coordinate with other humans to cut off escape routes. Coordinate? Logic's voice carried a slight digital tremor. Pack hunting, Alex nodded. Humans are social predators. We work together to bring down prey much larger and more dangerous than any individual human could handle alone. Communication, strategy, role specialization, it's really quite sophisticated. A Verdani student named Bloom's leaves were rustling so violently that photosynthesis appeared to have stopped entirely. But how did you develop civilization if you were busy hunting? Alex looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Hunting helped develop our civilization. The skills needed for successful persistence hunting, endurance, pattern recognition, communication, long-term planning, cooperation, those are the same skills needed for agriculture, engineering, and space. Exploration, Professor Thane felt his worldview crumbling. Every model of civilizational development he had studied suggested that species needed to abandon predatory behavior before achieving advanced society. Yet here sat a perfect persistence predator discussing space exploration. Alex, he said carefully, what about your body's emergency response systems? You mentioned them yesterday. Oh, right. Adrenaline response. Alex smiled, showing those predatory teeth again. It's basically a chemical override system. When humans perceive a threat or enter hunting mode, our bodies flood with hormones that increase strength, speed, pain tolerance, and reaction time. We become stronger and faster than our normal capabilities would suggest. For how long? Asked Glow, her bioluminescence dim with fear. The initial surge lasts about an hour, but humans can maintain elevated performance for much longer if needed. There are documented cases of humans performing impossible feats during emergencies, lifting vehicles to save trapped people, running impossible distances, fighting off multiple attackers. We call it superhuman strength, but it's really just our normal emergency programming. A mechanoid student made a sound like a hard drive failing. Alex continued, apparently on a roll. And then there's human dietary flexibility. We're omnivores, which means we can derive nutrition from almost anything organic. Humans can eat things that would poison most other species and survive in environments where food sources are limited or contaminated. What do humans prefer to eat? Asked Bloom, her voice barely audible. Alex considered the question. Seriously. Most humans enjoy meat, preferably cooked, but raw is acceptable in survival situations. We also consume plant matter, fungi, fermented organic compounds, and processed nutritional substances. Human digestive systems are remarkably adaptable. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of a Lumina student making what could only be described as whimpering light patterns. Professor Thane realized he needed to regain control of the situation before someone had a complete breakdown. Perhaps we should move on to defensive adaptations in herbivorous species. Actually, Alex interrupted, I'd love to hear about those. Human hunting strategies had to adapt constantly as prey species developed better defenses. It's like an evolutionary arms race, except humans usually won because we could think our way around most defensive adaptations. Think your way around them? Professor Thane's voice was getting higher. Sure. Physical defenses like armor, speed, or camouflage could usually be overcome with better tools, tactics, or coordination. The only really effective defense against human hunters was intelligence, which is probably why humans developed such strong social bonds with other intelligent species. Alex paused, looking around the room with those forward-facing predator eyes. Hey, is everyone okay? You all seem really tense. Did I say something wrong? The problem was, Alex hadn't said anything wrong. They had simply described their species' evolutionary history with the casual pride of any student discussing their background. But every word confirmed the worst fears of every other being in that room. They were sitting in a small, enclosed space with a perfect killing machine that had somehow learned to attend university. A persistent predator with pack-hunting instincts, chemical strength enhancement, and the ability to track and outthink prey across continents. As the class ended, students filed out with unprecedented speed. Several were already sending messages to their parents requesting immediate transportation home. Others were inquiring about transferring to universities in safer, more distant star systems. Professor Thane remained in his chair long after the room emptied, staring at the holographic display of peaceful herbivores grazing in eternal tranquility. Everything he thought he knew about the relationship between predation and civilization was crumbling around him. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrifying thought was taking shape. If humans had achieved spaceflight while retaining all of their predatory capabilities, what did that make them capable of achieving next? The Applied Physics Laboratory occupied an entire floor of the Institute's newest building, filled with equipment designed to test theoretical concepts in real-world applications. Professor Quinn, a silicon-based mechanoid with a pristine chrome finish, preferred practical demonstrations over abstract discussions. Their logical approach to education had earned respect across multiple star systems. Students arrived for the weekly structural engineering practical, though notably fewer than usual. Word about the human had spread, and several had requested schedule changes to avoid direct contact. Still, academic requirements meant that core students had little choice but to attend. Alex entered the lab carrying what appeared to be a complex calculation device and wearing protective clothing that looked somehow both functional and threatening. The fabric was thick and durable, designed for beings who expected physical contact with dangerous situations. "Good morning, Professor Quinn," Alex said, approaching the instructor's station. "I brought my own safety equipment. I wasn't sure if the standard gear would fit properly." Professor Quinn's optical sensors examined the human equipment with mechanical precision. "Acceptable. Your species appears to require more robust protection than our standard students." The lab was arranged in workstations where students would test load-bearing calculations using scaled models of architectural structures. The exercise involved building frameworks that could support increasing weights until failure point was reached. It was considered a safe, controlled environment for learning engineering principles. Alex was assigned to work with a group that included 2 Lumina students named Shine and Pulse, a Verdani called Branch, and a young avian named Swift. The group had specifically requested to work together, believing that their combined terror would somehow provide mutual protection. "Don't worry," Alex said cheerfully, settling into the workspace. "I'm really good with my hands. Humans have excellent fine motor control and spatial reasoning." Swift's feathers puffed out slightly. That's good to know." The first part of the exercise went smoothly. Students calculated theoretical load limits, then built small frameworks using standardized materials. Alex's structure was notably different from the others, more robust, with redundant support systems and what appeared to be over-engineering for the assigned requirements. "Why did you add extra supports?" Branch asked, their leaves rustling with nervousness. Alex looked up from their work. "Humans always build with safety margins. We assume things will go wrong and plan accordingly. It's better to over-engineer than to have catastrophic failure." Professor Quinn paused in their rounds to examine Alex's work. "Interesting approach. Most species calculate precise requirements and build to exact specifications." "That works fine in controlled environments," Alex replied, making small adjustments to their framework. "But humans learn to expect the unexpected. Our saying is, plan for the worst, hope for the best." The second phase of the exercise involved testing the structures with progressively heavier weights. Students used magnetic levitation systems to position loads precisely above their frameworks, then slowly lowered them while monitoring stress indicators. Everything proceeded normally, until Station 7 experienced a malfunction. The magnetic containment field fluctuated, then failed entirely. A massive structural beam, part of the laboratory's own support system and weighing nearly 500 kilograms, broke free from its mounting brackets high above the workspace. Time seemed to slow as the beam fell toward the group of lumina. Students at Station 7. Shine and Pulse looked up in terror, their bioluminescent bodies pulsing bright red in the universal distress pattern. They were directly beneath the falling mass, too delicate to survive even a glancing blow. Every other species in the lab reacted according to their evolutionary programming. The avians scattered with sharp cries of alarm. The Verdani froze, instinctively hoping to avoid notice. The mechanoids calculated impact probabilities and determined that intervention was impossible. Alex moved. The human crossed 15 meters of lab space in 3 seconds, diving beneath the falling beam just as it reached head height. Instead of dodging to safety, Alex positioned themselves directly in the path of the falling mass and caught it. The sound of impact was tremendous. Alex's feet slammed into the floor, creating cracks in the reinforced material. Their knees buckled under the impossible weight, but held. Muscles strained against the crushing load, tendons standing out like cables under tension. For a moment, nobody moved. The beam groaned in Alex's grip, slowly bending under its own weight despite the human's strength. Pulse and Shine cowered beneath the makeshift shelter, their lights flickering with shock. "Can't hold this very long," Alex managed through gritted teeth, their voice strained but controlled. "Need to lower it. Carefully." Professor Quinn's processors ran calculations at maximum speed. The beam should have crushed any organic being instantly. The fact that Alex was not only alive but still functional defied several laws of physics. "All students clear the area immediately," Professor Quinn commanded, their voice carrying emergency authority protocols. "Alex, can you maintain grip?" "Working on it," Alex replied, slowly adjusting their position. Sweat beaded on their forehead, the human cooling system activating under extreme stress. "Going to lower it to the floor. Everyone, stay back." What followed was perhaps the most controlled display of raw strength anyone in the lab had ever witnessed. Alex slowly, carefully lowered the massive beam to the ground, fighting gravity and structural dynamics with nothing but human muscle and determination. The process took almost 3 minutes, with Alex's breathing becoming more labored, but never losing control. When the beam finally touched the floor, Alex stepped back and immediately sat down hard, breathing heavily but alert. "Medical scan required," Professor Quinn announced, approaching with caution. "Alex, remain stationary while I assess your condition." "I'm okay," Alex said, though they were clearly exhausted. "Just need a minute to recover. Adrenaline response is starting to fade." Professor Quinn's sensors detected elevated heart rate, increased body temperature, and chemical signatures indicating massive hormone release, but no structural damage to the human's frame. "How are you not dead?" Professor Quinn asked bluntly. "That beam weighs 487.3 kilograms. The impact force should have caused catastrophic skeletal failure." Alex looked up with a slight smile. "Humans are built for emergencies. When someone is in danger, our bodies can perform way beyond normal limits. We call it superhuman strength, but it's really just our standard emergency programming." Shine and Pulse approached hesitantly, their bioluminescent patterns showing gratitude and amazement. "You saved us," Shine pulsed. "You could have been killed." "That's what humans do," Alex said simply. "We protect our pack. You're my classmates, which makes you part of my group. Humans don't leave group members in danger if we can help it." Swift landed nearby, his wings still trembling slightly. "But you barely know us. We've been avoiding you since you arrived." Alex, looked genuinely confused. So? That doesn't matter when someone needs help. Humans don't calculate whether people deserve protection. We just provide it. Professor Quinn was still running diagnostics, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Alex, your species routinely performs feats of strength that should be impossible? During emergencies, yes. Humans have documented cases of individuals lifting vehicles to save trapped people, carrying multiple casualties to safety, or fighting off threats much larger than themselves. The adrenaline response overrides normal safety limitations. Safety. Limitations? Branch asked, their leaves rustling with curiosity rather than fear for the first time. Human muscles are actually much stronger than we normally use, Alex explained, standing up slowly and testing their range of motion. Our nervous system restricts access to full strength because it would damage our own bodies. But in emergencies, those restrictions get turned off. You mean humans are normally holding back? Pulse flickered with what might have been amazement. Alex nodded. Every human you meet is operating at maybe 30% of their actual physical capability. We have to, or we'd tear our own bodies apart just walking around. The lab had gone completely quiet. Students from other workstations had gathered at a respectful distance, listening to this explanation with a mixture of awe and terror. Professor Quinn processed this information, cross-referencing it with their databases of species capabilities. Alex, if humans can access emergency strength levels, what prevents your species from using these capabilities for aggression? Alex looked thoughtful. Training mostly. Human children spend years learning to control their strength and emotions. We have social rules about when it's acceptable to use force, and very strict penalties for those who abuse their capabilities. But the capacity remains, Professor Quinn pressed. Always, Alex confirmed. Every human has the ability to become extremely dangerous in a matter of seconds, but we choose not to use it except to protect others. As the lab session ended and emergency crews arrived to properly secure the damaged beam, students filed out with a completely different understanding of their human classmate. They had witnessed something unprecedented, a perfect predator using their deadly capabilities not to harm, but to protect. That evening, the incident report sent ripples throughout the galactic academic community. For the first time in recorded history, a species had demonstrated the ability to retain predatory capabilities while applying them for purely protective purposes. The question that kept Professor Quinn's processors running all night was simple but profound. If humans could override their own safety systems to save others, what else might they be capable of when properly motivated? News of the laboratory incident spread across campus faster than quantum communications. Within hours, Alex had transformed from an object of terror into something far more complex, a walking contradiction that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about predators and civilization. The campus social center hummed with nervous energy as students gathered for the weekly cultural exchange dinner. Normally, these events celebrated the peaceful diversity of galactic civilization, with species sharing traditional foods, art, and stories from their homeworlds. Tonight felt different. Everyone knew the human would be there. Alex arrived carrying several containers that emitted unfamiliar aromas. Instead of the dark, threatening scents from before, these smells were warm and complex, triggering curious, rather than fearful responses from nearby students. I brought food from Earth, Alex announced to the gathering, seemingly oblivious to the way conversations had stopped throughout the room. I made sure everything is safe for different metabolisms. No toxins, allergens, or compounds that might harm any of your species. Branch, the Verdani student from the physics lab, approached cautiously. Since the beam incident, their attitude toward the human had shifted from terror to fascination. "You cooked food for us?" "Of course," Alex replied, beginning to unpack the containers. Humans are social creatures. Sharing meals is how we build community and show respect for others. The first container revealed something that looked like small golden-brown spheres. Alex offered one to Branch. These are called cookies. They're made from plant-based ingredients with natural sweeteners, very safe for Verdani digestive systems. Branch accepted the offering with trembling leaves, took a small bite, and immediately brightened. This is pleasant, sweet, and complex. What are the other flavors? Vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg, Alex explained. Humans use these spices to enhance food flavors. We're actually known for our cuisine throughout our region of space. More students began gathering around the humans' food station. The cookies were followed by what Alex called fruit bread, dense, sweet loaves filled with preserved organic matter that even the silicon-based students found interesting from a chemical perspective. The preservation process fascinates me, said Logic, the mechanoid. How do humans maintain nutritional value while extending storage life? Alex launched into an enthusiastic explanation of fermentation, dehydration, and chemical preservation that revealed an unexpected depth of knowledge about biochemistry and food science. Shine, one of the Lumina students Alex had saved, pulsed. A tentative question pattern. Why do humans put so much effort into food preparation? Cooking is one of humanity's oldest arts, Alex replied, offering her a carefully prepared gel cube that would be compatible with Lumina biology. We believe that taking time to prepare food properly shows care for the people who will eat it. Good food brings people together. As the evening progressed, something remarkable began happening. Students who had spent weeks avoiding Alex started gathering around, drawn by curiosity and the surprisingly pleasant food. The humans seemed genuinely delighted by the interest, answering questions with enthusiasm and obvious joy at being included in the social gathering. Alex, said Swift, the young avian, you mentioned that humans are social creatures, but your species is also predatory. How does that work? Alex paused in their food distribution, considering the question seriously. That's actually a really good question. Human social behavior evolved from pack hunting, but it developed far beyond that. We form communities, take care of each other, and work together on projects that benefit the group. Even with non-humans? Asked Pulse, flickering with curiosity. Especially with non-humans, Alex replied immediately. Humans are really good at forming bonds with other intelligent species. On Earth, we domesticated and partnered with other species thousands of years ago. We have this saying, a friend is a friend, regardless of species. Glow, who had been quietly observing from a distance, finally approached. But humans are still dangerous, aren't they? You could hurt any of us easily. Alex's expression grew serious. Yes, I could. Any human could. But that's exactly why we don't. I don't understand, Branch said, their leaves rustling with confusion. Alex sat down on one of the reinforced chairs, bringing themselves closer to the eye level of the smaller students. Think about it from our perspective. Humans are stronger, faster, and more physically capable than most species we've encountered. We could probably take whatever we wanted through force. Several students shifted nervously at this admission. But we don't, Alex continued, because the thing that makes humans really dangerous isn't our strength or our hunting ability. It's our empathy. Empathy? Logic's voice carried digital confusion. Our ability to understand and care about what others are feeling, Alex explained. Humans developed the capacity to see other beings, even non-humans, as part of our social group. Once you're part of a humans group, we'll protect you with the same intensity we once used for hunting. Alex gestured around the room. Every person here, you're all part of my social group now. That means if someone threatened you, my brain would trigger the same response patterns my ancestors used for defending their families from predators. You would fight for us? Shine asked, her bioluminescence showing amazement. I would run myself to death for you, Alex replied without hesitation. That's what humans do. We turned our predator instincts into protection instincts. We hunt down problems instead of prey. We chase solutions instead of victims. The room had grown quiet, with students from other groups drifting over to listen to the conversation. "But how do we know you won't change your minds?" asked a mechanoid from across the room. "What stops humans from deciding to use their capabilities against others?" Alex thought about this for a long moment. "The same thing that stops you from using your superior processing power to manipulate others or prevents the avians from using their flight capability to spy on ground-based species. Choice. Choice? Every day, every human makes the choice to be civilized instead of savage. We could be the galaxy's most terrifying predators, but we choose to be its most dedicated protectors instead. The most dangerous thing about humans isn't that we can destroy, it's that we can destroy and we choose not to." A young Verdani student from another table called out, "But what if humans get angry?" Alex smiled that toothy human grin, but now it seemed less threatening and more genuinely warm. "Then we get really, really good at fixing whatever made us angry. Humans channel aggression into problem solving. If something threatens our friends, we don't attack it. We engineer solutions to eliminate the threat permanently." Engineer solutions? Professor Thane had arrived and was listening from the edge of the group. "Sure. If there's a disease threatening people we care about, humans will work for decades to cure it. If there's a natural disaster, we'll develop technology to predict and prevent it. If there's a conflict between species, we'll mediate until we find a solution that works for everyone." Alex gestured around the room again. "Humans don't want to conquer the galaxy, Professor. We want to fix it. We want to make it a safer, better place for everyone to live." Branch leaned forward, their leaves bright with interest. "Is that why humans joined the galactic community? To fix problems?" "Partly," Alex admitted. "We heard about all these amazing species working together, sharing knowledge and building peaceful civilizations. It sounded like exactly the kind of project humans love. Complicated, challenging, and aimed at making life better for everyone involved." The conversation continued late into the evening, with more students joining as word spread that the human was actually quite friendly. Alex shared stories of Earth, not tales of conquest and hunting, but descriptions of art, music, literature, and the countless ways humans had learned to create rather than destroy. "On Earth, we have this concept called turning swords into plowshares," Alex explained to a fascinated audience. "It means taking tools designed for warfare and converting them into tools for growth and prosperity. That's basically what human civilization has been doing for thousands of years." "Can you give us an example?" asked Swift, his earlier fear completely replaced by curiosity. "Well, the same persistence and tracking skills our ancestors used for hunting, we now use for scientific research. The pack coordination that helped us bring down large prey became teamwork for building cities and spaceships. The pattern recognition that made us excellent trackers now helps us solve complex mathematical problems. Logic processed this information with mechanical precision. So human predatory capabilities were repurposed for constructive applications." "Exactly," Alex nodded enthusiastically. "Instead of hunting animals, we hunt knowledge. Instead of tracking prey, we track solutions to problems. Instead of working together to kill, we work together to build." Glow pulsed a thoughtful orange pattern. "But what about humans who don't choose to be constructive? Every species has individuals who make poor choices." Alex's expression grew more serious. "That's true. But here's the thing about human society. We police ourselves. Humans who use their capabilities to harm others face the combined opposition of every other human. We don't tolerate predation within our own species or against others." "How does that work practically?" Professor Thane asked, genuinely intrigued. "Human law enforcement and military forces are essentially predators trained to hunt other predators," Alex explained. "We use our tracking, persistence, and pack coordination abilities to stop humans who choose to cause harm. It's very effective. Because we understand predatory behavior from the inside. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. Here was a species that had essentially weaponized their own predatory nature against predation itself. That's... Branch started, their leaves rustling with amazement. That's brilliant! You turned yourselves into anti-predators. Alex grinned. We like to think so. Humans have this saying, it takes one to know one. Since we understand predatory behavior, we're really good at stopping it. As the evening wound down, students began sharing their own cultural traditions with Alex. The Lumina created beautiful light patterns that told stories of their peaceful evolution. The Verdani sang growing songs that helped plants flourish. The Avians shared aerial dances that celebrated the joy of flight. Alex watched and listened with obvious fascination, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine appreciation for each cultural display. When asked to share something from human culture, Alex thought for a moment before beginning to sing. The song was unlike anything the other students had heard, complex harmonies that seemed to tell a story of struggle, growth, and hope. The human voice was rich and powerful, designed for communication across great distances, but used here with gentle precision. That was beautiful, Shine pulsed when Alex finished. What was it about? It's called Amazing Grace, Alex replied. It's about redemption. The idea that no matter how lost or dangerous you might be, you can always choose to become something better. It's very popular among humans because it represents what we hope to achieve as a species. The evening ended with something unprecedented in galactic academic history, a group of prey species voluntarily spending social time with an apex predator, not despite their differences, but because of what those differences could accomplish, together. As students began to leave, many approached Alex personally to express gratitude for the food, the conversation, and the new perspective on human nature. "Alex," said Branch as they prepared to depart, "would you like to join our study group tomorrow? We're working on a project about cooperative problem-solving across species barriers." Alex's face lit up with genuine joy. "I would love that. Humans are really good at problem-solving, especially when we're working with others." After the last student left, Alex remained in the social center, cleaning up the food containers and helping restore the space to its original condition. Professor Thane approached, his earlier fear replaced by thoughtful curiosity. "Alex, may I ask you something?" "Of course, Professor." "When you first arrived, we all saw you as a threat. We were terrified of what you might do. But tonight, I watched you bring together species that barely interact with each other normally. How did you know that would work?" Alex paused in their cleaning, considering the question seriously. "I didn't know it would work, Professor, but humans have learned that most fear comes from misunderstanding. If you give people a chance to see you as an individual rather than a stereotype, they usually respond positively. Even when the stereotype is dangerous predator?" Alex smiled. "Especially then. Humans know we look scary to other species. We've learned that the best way to handle that is to be extra careful, extra kind, and extra helpful until people get used to us." Professor Thane nodded slowly, his worldview continuing to reshape itself around this unprecedented species. "Alex, I believe you may have just conducted the most successful social integration experiment in galactic history." As they finished cleaning and prepared to leave, Alex turned to the professor with a question of their own. "Professor Thane, what do you think will happen now? Will other species be willing to give humans a chance?" The elderly avian considered this carefully. "After tonight? I believe they will. You've shown us that predators and prey can coexist, not just peacefully, but beneficially. That's a lesson the galaxy has been waiting to learn for a very long time." Walking across campus under the alien stars, Alex felt something they hadn't experienced since arriving, a sense of belonging. For the first time, the human was no longer an outsider looking in, but a member of a community that was stronger because of their differences rather than despite them. The grand auditorium of the Galactic Institute had never seen such attendance for a student presentation. Word of the human exchange student had spread far beyond campus, drawing academics, diplomats, and representatives from dozens of species across known space. The massive hall buzzed with conversations in hundreds of languages, from musical avian trills to the geometric light patterns of the Lumina collective consciousness. Alex stood backstage, reviewing their notes one final time. The presentation topic had been chosen weeks ago, long before anyone truly understood what it meant to have a human in their midst. Evolutionary advantages in cooperative species seemed almost prophetic now. Professor Thane approached, his silver-tipped wings slightly spread in the avian gesture for formal occasions. Alex, I must admit I'm nervous about this presentation. The audience includes some of the most influential minds in galactic academia. I'm nervous too, Alex replied honestly, but humans do better under pressure. Our adrenaline response actually improves cognitive function during high-stress situations. Of course it does, Professor Thane muttered, still marveling at how this species had turned every apparent disadvantage into a strength. The auditorium lights dimmed, and Alex walked onto the stage with that characteristic fluid grace that had once terrified everyone present. Now, many in the audience leaned forward with curiosity rather than shrinking back in fear. The events of the past month had fundamentally changed how the galactic community viewed this unprecedented species. Good evening, Alex began, their voice carrying easily to the back of the vast hall. My name is Alex, and I'm here representing humanity in our first formal academic presentation to the galactic community. The holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of known space with various species' homeworlds highlighted in different colors. For my presentation, tonight I want to discuss evolutionary advantages in cooperative species. But before I begin, I need to address something that I know many of you are thinking about. Alex paused, making eye contact with various sections of the audience. You're wondering how a species like humans, obvious predators who retained all their dangerous capabilities, managed to achieve spaceflight and advanced civilization. A murmur ran through the crowd. Alex was addressing the question that had puzzled galactic academics since first contact. The answer challenges everything. We thought we knew about the relationship between predation and civilization, Alex continued. Every species in this auditorium followed the same basic evolutionary path. You became peaceful by becoming physically incapable of significant violence. You evolved away from predatory behavior. The display showed evolutionary trees for various species, all following similar patterns of physical reduction and mental advancement. Humans took a different path entirely. We became peaceful while retaining all our predatory capabilities. We chose not to use them. The auditorium fell silent. This was the heart of the mystery that had captivated and terrified the galaxy. This choice, and I want to emphasize that it was a choice, gave humans some unique advantages in cooperative relationships, Alex explained. When a species voluntarily restrains its own power, it creates a different kind of trust than when a species simply lacks that power. The next slide showed comparative data on interspecies cooperation rates, with human-involved partnerships showing remarkably high success rates despite their brief contact with galactic civilization. Let me give you a practical example, Alex said, gesturing to the audience. When the peaceful species here cooperate, you do so because cooperation is your nature. You literally cannot choose otherwise. But when humans cooperate, we do so while consciously choosing not to use our predatory advantages. Logic, the mechanoid student, spoke up from the audience. Are you suggesting that chosen cooperation is more valuable than instinctive cooperation? Alex nodded. In many ways, yes. When humans choose to cooperate, our partners know that we could have chosen differently. That knowledge creates a deeper level of trust and security. Professor Quinn's voice carried from the middle section. But surely there are disadvantages to retaining predatory capabilities? Absolutely, Alex agreed immediately. Humans have to work constantly to control our impulses and channel our aggressive instincts constructively. We have extensive social systems designed to manage our own dangerous nature. The display shifted to show human social structures, laws, enforcement systems, educational programs, all designed around managing and directing predatory instincts. But here's what makes it worthwhile, Alex continued. Those same predatory instincts, when properly channeled, become incredibly powerful tools for protecting and defending cooperative relationships. Alex clicked to the next slide, showing crisis response data. When peaceful species face existential threats, your options are limited by your evolutionary constraints. When humans face threats to our social groups, we don't have those constraints. The data was sobering. Human response to threats against allied species showed effectiveness rates that defied conventional understanding. Glow pulsed a question from the front row. But how do your partners know you won't turn those capabilities against them? Alex smiled, and for the first time in weeks, that predatory grin didn't frighten anyone. Because of something my species discovered long ago. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy isn't the one that can destroy everything. It's the one that can destroy everything and chooses not to. The auditorium was completely silent now. Humans learned that true strength isn't about what you can do to others, Alex continued. It's about what you choose not to do, even when you could. The final slide appeared, showing a simple equation. Capability plus choice. Trust. Every species here achieved peace through limitation, Alex explained. Humans achieved peace through limitation of a different kind, self-limitation. We limit ourselves not because we have to, but because we choose to. Branch, the Verdani student, stood up in the audience. Alex, what does this mean for the future of galactic cooperation? Alex considered the question carefully. I think it means we need to expand our definition of what civilization looks like. Until now, the galaxy has believed that advanced species must evolve away from dangerous capabilities. Humans prove that's not the only path. What would you call the human path? Asked Professor Thane. Ethical predation, Alex replied. We hunt problems instead of prey. We track solutions instead of victims. We use pack coordination to build, instead of destroy. We've weaponized our predatory nature against predation itself. The implications rippled through the audience like a shockwave. Here was a species that had essentially inverted the traditional relationship between predation and civilization. But perhaps most importantly, Alex continued, humans have discovered that the greatest victory isn't conquest, it's teaching other predators to choose cooperation. Swift, the young avian, called out from the upper section. Are there other species like humans? We don't know yet, Alex admitted, but humans are actively looking for them. One of our primary goals in joining galactic civilization is to find other species that might be struggling with their own predatory nature and help them find constructive outlets. The auditorium erupted in discussion as species representatives began to grasp the full implications of human philosophy. Think about it, Alex said, raising their voice to be heard over the conversations. Every species here has assumed that predatory behavior is inherently destructive. But what if it's not? What if predatory instincts can be channeled into protective instincts? What if the galaxy's most dangerous species could become its most dedicated guardians? Professor Thane stood up, his wings spread wide in the avian, gesture for profound revelation. Alex, are you suggesting that humans could help other species develop ethical predation? I'm suggesting that humans have already started, Alex replied with a grin. Every friendship we've formed here, every cooperative relationship we've built, every time we've chosen to protect instead of attack, we've been demonstrating that predators can choose to be guardians. The presentation concluded with thunderous applause. Not just the polite academic appreciation typical of scholarly events, but genuine enthusiasm from beings who had just witnessed their understanding of evolution and civilization fundamentally restructured. As Alex left the stage, they were immediately surrounded by researchers, diplomats, and students eager to discuss the implications of human philosophy. But the most meaningful moment came when Shine, Pulse, Branch, Swift, and Logic approached, together. "Alex," Shine pulsed. "We've been talking, and we have a proposal." "We want to form a permanent study group," Branch added, their leaves rustling with excitement. "A cooperative research team focusing on multi-species problem-solving. With a human as the primary coordinator," Logic stated with mechanical precision. "Your predatory pattern recognition and persistence capabilities would be invaluable for tracking complex solutions." Alex looked around at the group of beings who had once fled in terror at their approach. "You want me to hunt problems for you?" "We want you to hunt problems with us," Swift corrected, his feathers bright with anticipation. As they walked across campus together under the alien stars, Alex reflected on the journey from feared outsider to trusted teammate. The human exchange program had accomplished something unprecedented. It had proven that predators and prey could not only coexist but could create something stronger together than either could achieve alone. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in galactic history, that was because a predator had walked into class and chosen to become a teacher instead of a threat. Behind them, the grand auditorium still buzzed with excited discussions as academics from across known space began to reconsider everything they thought they knew about evolution, civilization, and the possibility that the most dangerous species in the galaxy might also be its most hopeful.